Hello everyone, I'm Helen. Today I'm going to help you uncover the truth behind the latest episode of Stone. He titled this episode, Opium Floods Under Trump's Rule, Isolationism, Decaying Navy, Government Paralysis, Misappropriation of Military Funds, and the Southeast Mutual Protection for Tending Their Own Gardens. It sounds like a satirical comedy, but if you listen closely, you'll realize this isn't a joke. It's actually a script for Chinese Communist Party propaganda. Stone uses the late Qing dynasty as a metaphor to mock the United States, portraying Trump as a Qing emperor, calling financial reforms isolationism, referring to infrastructure as tending gardens, and even shifting the blame for the fentanyl crisis, caused by the CCP itself, onto the US government. On the surface, it tells a story, but in reality, it creates an illusion, making the audience believe that the American system is failing, the government is corrupt, and society is collapsing, while China is the stable and rational one. This is the psychological warfare tactic the CCP is best at, wrapping hatred in humor and disguising brainwashing with metaphors. Let's break it down one by one. The so-called tending gardens is not extravagance or waste at all. Trump's $300 million White House renovation project was entirely funded by private donations, without using any taxpayer money. The old White House banquet hall had been dilapidated for decades and could no longer safely host foreign guests. Trump rebuilt it to restore the nation's image and elevate the standards of diplomacy. Stone deliberately cut out the fact that the funding was private, and portrayed the renovation as building a golden palace. The same thing, he just changes the headline and it becomes corruption. This is his usual smear tactic. Now let's look at the so-called double standard. During Obama's term, the White House also underwent a major renovation with a budget as high as $376 million, which would be about $500 million today. All of that money came from taxpayers' pockets. But at the time, the mainstream media was collectively silent. But today, Trump raises $300 million on his own to rebuild national facilities. Yet Stone calls him an emperor renovating his garden. Now let's look at the lie about misappropriating military funds. In fact, during the government shutdown, a patriot anonymously donated $130 million so that soldiers could get paid on time. This money was completely legal and was reviewed and accepted by the Department of Defense. But Stone calls it budget misappropriation, twisting even good intentions into evidence of a crime. And as for the joke about Trump suing himself, in reality, that was Trump, in his private capacity, lawfully seeking compensation for damages caused by an illegal investigation. This fully complies with citizens' rights, involved no use of public funds, and was not an abuse of power. Yet Stone edited it into a comedy clip, making people think the US government had already fallen into chaos. The most ironic thing is that in September the US Treasury just released data showing a monthly fiscal surplus of $198 billion, a record high. This clearly demonstrates that the Trump administration's economic policies are working. The finances are sound, manufacturing is returning, and the dollar is strengthening. But Stone insists on portraying the fiscal surplus as isolationism. This isn't a mistake, it's deliberate. Next comes the issue of rampant opium. Stone makes it sound as if the drug epidemic on American streets is all Trump's fault. But he will never tell you the real source. Where does fentanyl come from? It comes from the chemical industry controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Over the past decade, Chinese manufacturers have continuously supplied raw materials to Mexican drug cartels, who then smuggle them into the United States, causing the loss of 70,000 lives every year. This is no longer just a drug problem, it's a silent chemical war. The Trump administration had already issued warnings and pushed for the Fentanyl Sanctions Act, directly sanctioning the Chinese supply chain. Meanwhile, California Governor Newsom has been indulging drug use in San Francisco, setting up so-called safe injection sites and allowing drug dealers to run rampant. San Francisco has been ruined at their hands. So, the opioid epidemic is not Trump's failure, it's the result of the CCP's export and the indulgence of places like Lanzhou. Yet Stone turns around and mocks the US government, whitewashing the CCP. Let's look at his fabricated claims about a decaying Navy and regional self-preservation. The US Navy has extended some old ships' service life, but that's normal during strategic transition. A new generation of destroyers and submarines is under construction. Extending the service life of old ships isn't corruption, it's part of modernization management. As for so-called regional self-preservation, that's actually the vitality of America's federal system. Each state governs independently, providing checks and balances, and moving forward together. Stone calls autonomy division, and that's his most dangerous trick. To sum it up, from gardening to the opioid crisis, Stone's entire show almost completely parrots the CCP's propaganda script, calling patriotism dictatorship, calling reform corruption, and calling recovery collapse. He's not a commentator but a foreign agent disguised as an independent voice. Exposing Stone is the first step in protecting America. Follow me, Helen Mada, as we continue to uncover the real forces behind these fake news stories. Next, let's talk about the last 2 points. The opioid epidemic and the corruption of the Navy. These two are the most insidious parts of Stone's video. He says America's drug crisis is the result of rot under Trump, but he doesn't tell you where the real root of the problem lies. It comes from the CCP. Over the past decade, Chinese chemical companies have exported fentanyl precursors through Mexican drug cartels, which then flow into the United States. These drugs kill more than 70,000 Americans every year. This is war, a chemical war without gunfire. The Trump administration recognized this early on, pushed for the Fentanyl Sanctions Act, sanctioned China's supply chain, and strengthened border interception. But in California, Newsom has tolerated drug use and allowed drug dealers to run rampant, turning San Francisco into a city of drugs. So, the opioid epidemic is not Trump's fault. It's the result of the CCP's export and the leniency from places like California. Yet Stone says the opposite, and that's what makes him truly malicious. Now, let's look at the so-called decay of the Navy. It's true that the U.S. Navy has extended the service life of older ships, but that's part of a strategic upgrade. A new generation of destroyers and Columbia-class submarines are already under construction. This is modernization, not decline. Stone uses the idea of being outdated to imply corruption, just like calling routine maintenance and tire changes a total write-off. What he's trying to create is the impression that America is collapsing. And then there's what he mentioned about Southeastern mutual protection and regional self-preservation. In the US, that's not rebellion at all. It's the strength of the federal system. Every state has the right to set its own policies in times of crisis. That's decentralization, not division. But Stone calls self-governance collapse and diversity chaos. This is exactly the CCP's narrative style because they fear freedom. So, from garden renovations to the opioid crisis, Stone spends the entire episode copying the CCP's propaganda playbook, calling patriotism dictatorship, calling reform corruption, and calling recovery collapse. He is not a commentator, but a foreign agent disguised as an independent voice. Exposing Stone is the first step in protecting America. Follow me, Helen Mada, as we continue to uncover the real forces behind these fake news stories.